Okay, so today we're diving into a story right in the heart of Bellevue,
A hell view.
where it feels like we've got um, art and nature and maybe a little bit of community tension kind of all swirling together.
Yeah, it's like all those ingredients, sometimes they work out beautifully.
Right.
Sometimes, not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is one of those where you might want to grab a seat and get ready because it gets interesting fast.
Mm.
We're talking about the story of a woman named Andy Phibbs. She was a Northwest studio pottery artist. And for like over 50 years, she lived and worked on this property in Bellevue. That honestly sounds kind of magical when you hear about it. Like imagine like you've got these vibrant pink blossoms every spring, right?
Right.
And then trees. I mean, we're talking like massive, massive trees. Like you could practically live in the trunk of one of these trees.
Oh, yeah, some of them were huge, like over 111 inches around.
I mean, that's bigger than some like studio apartments I've seen. So you start to get this picture of what this property was like. But then here's where things take a turn. Andy Phibbs passes away and LLC buys the property. And suddenly this little oasis of art and nature, it's facing demolition.
And it wasn't just, the house itself. They were talking about taking down a bunch of trees.
Right.
I mean, we're talking over 14 significant trees, and 2 of them were officially designated landmark trees, just gone. And these weren't just any trees, These were like living pieces of Bellevue's history, part of what made the landscape there unique.
Yeah, it's like you lose a tree like that, it's like losing a part of the city story.
Yeah.
So that's why we're here. We're going full on like detective mode on this one. We're digging through site plans, historical photos, even I think we got our hands on some city council meeting minutes, right?
Oh, yeah. Things got a little heated in those meetings.
Yeah, so we're trying to figure out like how did this happen? How does a development project, which I mean on the surface level, development usually means progress. How does that spark this kind of like anger and concern in the community?
Yeah, well, a big piece of this is, development projects, they don't just get to do whatever they want, right? There are rules, regulations.
Right.
And one of the big ones is something called the floor area ratio.
The what?
Floor area ratio?
Okay, so not gonna lie, not the catchiest term I've ever heard.
No, it doesn't exactly scream like exciting podcast material, but it's important.
Okay, so floor area ratio. Why should we care about this?
Okay, imagine this. Think of a cake.
Okay.
The lot that your house sits on, that's the plate.
Okay.
House itself, that's the cake.
Gotcha.
The floor area ratio, or FAR, that dictates how much cake you can put on that plate.
I'm following.
So in this case, the lot, it's 8,936 square feet. Bellevue's zoning rules, they say you can only cover 50% of that lot with a house. So that would be 4,468 square feet of cake, if you will.
So that's like the maximum allowed, right?
Right, a FAR of 50%.
50%.
But I got a feeling this isn't a story about following the recipe.
Because it wouldn't be a deep dive if it was.
Exactly. The site plans for this new development, they list a FAR of 63.7%. So now we're talking 5,693 square feet, way more cake than that plate was designed to hold.
Whoa, 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 hold on. So they're trying to build a house that's almost 30% bigger than what's allowed? How does that even fly?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
And it gets even, well, remember those setbacks and that lot lift we mentioned?
Right, right.
Those factors, they can make the actual size of that house even bigger.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we've got some discrepancies in the numbers here and potentially some big ones. So, like, what does this mean for the people who actually live in this neighborhood?
Well, imagine you live next door to this property, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you've got a beautiful view of the Cascades, or maybe your backyard, it's your peaceful little haven, gets that perfect afternoon sunlight, and suddenly, bam, this house, way bigger than anything else around it, pops up, blocks your view, casts a shadow over your garden.
Yeah, it's like plopping down a McMansion in the middle of a charming little neighborhood.
Right, it just doesn't fit.
It just feels wrong.
Yeah.
But this isn't just about like aesthetics, right? Or even just like property values. It's bigger than that.
Oh, yeah, way bigger. We're talking about the character of the whole neighborhood, that feeling, that sense of place that made people want to live there in the first place.
Here.
And in Newport Hills, that's something they take seriously. They have these things called CC&Rs.
TC&R.
CC&Rs.
Okay, those.
Think of them like neighborhood rules that everyone agrees to.
Okay, so like the rules you see at a pool. No running, no diving.
Exactly. But instead of no diving, we're talking about like what your house can look like, what you can plant in your yard, how much of your property you can pave over. All these rules, They're there to maintain the neighborhood's look, its feel.
So it's about preserving that sense of place.
Exactly.
It's like these CCNRs, they're kind of like the rule book for the neighborhood.
Yeah, they're meant to keep things consistent.
Right. But if a developer can just like kind of waltz in and build something bigger than what's allowed, doesn't that like weaken those rules for everyone?
It's like, you create a crack in the foundation.
Yeah.
Suddenly those rules, they don't seem so solid anymore.
Right, right.
And I think that's a big part of why people are so, I don't know, fired up about this whole thing.
Yeah.
This isn't just about one development. It's about, like, what kind of precedent does this set for the future of the neighborhood, you know?
And people aren't just talking about it, right? Like there's a petition going around.
Oh, yeah, there's a petition, and it's gotten, like, a lot of signatures.
Okay, so it's gaining some traction.
Yeah, and it's not just about this one development. They're asking for some bigger changes. Like, they want Bellevue to have stricter rules about protecting trees.
Interesting.
You know, like recognizing that these trees aren't just decorations, they're landmarks, they're part of what makes Bellevue Bellevue.
Yeah, okay, but I mean, stricter tree ordinances, petitions, those things, they take time.
They do.
And something tells me, like, bulldozers don't really wait around for, paperwork. So what can people do, like, right now to make a difference?
Well, that's where the CC&Rs come in, right?
Okay.
They're not just like suggestions, they're legally binding agreements.
Hmm.
And in a lot of cases, neighbors can actually like enforce those rules through legal action if they need to.
So it's like the community has some teeth, they have some power.
They do, yeah. It gives them a way to like push back against these developments that threaten the character of their neighborhood.
And I mean, this is really where I think we see the legacy of Andy Phibbs kind of coming into play here, right? I mean, it's ironic, right? This woman who cultivated this property for 50 years, this place that really seemed to embody this respect for nature and this artistic spirit. It's now at the center of this battle over development.
It is. And you can't talk about this development without talking about the sense of loss.
Right.
And I don't just mean the loss of the trees or even like the beauty of Andy Phibbs's property. I'm talking about like the loss of that magic that happens when you have art and nature and community all coming together in a place.
I mean, you can almost feel it when you look at those photos of her property.
Yeah.
It's like you get this feeling of peace, of creativity,
I know.
And it's kind of heartbreaking to think that something that unique could just be bulldozed over in the name of progress.
Yeah, and that brings up this bigger question, right?
Which is,
What does progress really mean? Is it just about like bigger buildings, more concrete?
right.
Or is it about holding on to the things that make a community more than just a place to live?
Like beauty, history, that connection to nature.
Exactly.
And I mean, this isn't just a Bellevue thing. I feel like communities everywhere are kind of grappling with this very question.
Yeah.
Right? So if someone's listening to this right now and they're thinking, man, this sounds so familiar, what can they learn from what's happening in Bellevue?
I think the big takeaway here is you have a voice.
You do?
Like, get involved in your local government, learn about what your neighborhood's CC&Rs are, and don't be afraid to speak up when something doesn't feel right.
Because progress shouldn't mean erasing the past, right?
Right.
It should be about honoring the past while you're building the future.
Yeah, and sometimes that means having some tough conversations, challenging the way things have always been done. It might get a little messy.
It's like, what does they say? You don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Right.
But it seems like the people in Newport Hills, like, they know exactly what they have. They do.
Yeah.
And they're not going down without a fight.
And that's what I think is so amazing about this. Like, it reminds you that we actually can make a difference
Yeah.
when it comes to, what our communities look like, feel like.
Yeah, it's about, like, really taking ownership, right? It's not just like, oh, well, progress is happening, got to get on board.
Right.
Like, you actually get a say. It makes you wonder, like, what would Andy Phibbs think about all this, This property, her haven, this place where she poured her creativity and love of nature, now it's like at the heart of this debate.
Yeah, it's like her legacy has become about something so much bigger
Right.
than just this one property or this one development.
Right. It's about, like, what are the things that we value?
Yeah.
What are the things that give a place its character, its soul even?
Exactly.
And those are the things that, you can't just, like, bulldoze over and expect them to come back.
Exactly. You lose a tree, you lose a piece of history, you lose a place like Andy Phibbs's property, you lose that spark that made the community special.
Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up this whole deep dive here, what's like the one thing you really hope people take away from all of this?
Don't underestimate your own voice. Like, seriously, get to know your neighbors, figure out what's going on in your local government, and if something doesn't feel right, say something. You might be surprised what can happen.
Love it. And on that note, we'll let everyone, we'll let you sit with that. This has been a quite a deep dive into, well, Bellevue, where we've seen how art, nature, and a community trying to find its way all kind of come together. And it's a good reminder that progress doesn't always happen in a straight line.
That's for sure.
Sometimes the most important battles are those that are fought for, the soul of a place. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and, well, keep diving deep.